is Michael Vogt, and it's been a very great blessing of mine to have the opportunity to study Jyotish for the past 25 years. I'd like to invite everyone to explore ACVA's YouTube channel. And a video recording of today's webinar will be uploaded to ACVA's YouTube channel for later viewing. And there will be an opportunity for attendees to ask questions at the conclusion of today's webinar via the chat bar. All questions may be submitted at that time. Due to the limitations of time today, unfortunately, it will not be possible to address individual chart questions during today's webinar. At this time, I'd like to please invite everyone to our invocation for today's session. You're invited to chant along with me the following Ganesh mantra 3 times. Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapatiye Namaha. Today's presentation is an introduction to Varshaphala. During our presentation today, we'll discuss the definition, origin, and tradition of Varshaphala. We will explore the role of Varshaphala in Vedic astrology. And we will introduce some of the unique features of Varshaphala. And finally, we'll present an interpretive technique of a Varshaphala reading, and this will be the takeaway from today's presentation. Listed below are some recommended references and texts for studying Varshaphala. First of all, Dr. B.V. Raman's Varshaphala, or the Hindu Progressed Horoscope, is an excellent text. Dr. K.S. Charak's A Textbook of Varshaphala, and also Dr. K.S. Charak's Predictive Techniques of Varshaphala are recommended as well. All three of these texts are dedicated to the study of Varshaphala. Additionally, Bepin Bihari's The Timing of Events, as well as Sumit Chug's Timing of Events, each contain sections within them that are dedicated to Varshaphala. So, Varshaphala, at a glance, we know that the term Varsha means year and Phal means fruit. So Varshaphala translated means fruit of the year. Varshaphala is an integral feature of Vedic astrology that provides detailed interpretive information for a one-year period of time. And Varshaphala is based upon the transit of the sun and refers to a unique system of interpretation for the solar return chart. This chart is referred to as the Varsha Kundali. However, sometimes it's also referred to as an annual chart or progress chart. The Varsha Kundali is constructed based upon the precise moment each year that the sun returns to the same sidereal position as the moment of birth in the heavens. And this moment is referred to as the Varsha Pravesha, sometimes referred to as Varsha Ramba. So the Varsha Pravesha, this occurs on the Gregorian calendar on or very near one's date of birth. And it may be noted that the location used for the construction of the Varshakundali is a matter of some discussion among Vedic astrologers. However, this particular astrologer has found that utilizing the location of birth for constructing the Varshakundali has been received well and produced good results. I'd like to take just a moment and talk about the origin and tradition of Varshaphala. So Varshaphala originates from the Tajik branch of Jyotish. And Tajik is a Sanskrit term that translates to Arab or Persian. And so Varshaphala is a unique branch of Vedic astrology that incorporates Arabic and Persian astrological influences. These unique features and principles of Varshaphala are then utilized in the interpretation of the solar return chart, or Varshakundali. So the Tajik branch of Vedic astrology, the main proponents of this branch of Vedic astrology, first of all, Nilakanta Daivagnya, and his treatise on Varshaphala is referred to as the Tajik Nilakanta. Also, Keshava and Hayan Bhaskar are also important proponents of this branch of Vedic astrology. The Tajika branch of Vedic astrology, particularly popular and extensively utilized in northern India, although it is practiced around the world today. So far, we have discussed the definition of Varshaphala and its tradition and origin. I'd like to take a moment now and turn our attention to the role of Varshaphala, the role of Varshaphala within Vedic astrology. So firstly, the exact moment of solar return, that precise moment, it releases latent energy that will be actualized during the upcoming year for the native. These upcoming 12 months, that's referred to as the progressed year. So the characteristics and timing of this released latent energy, they're interpreted through Varshaphala. So Varshaphala, therefore, provides a magnified view into the events that will unfold within the progressed year. The Varshakundali, it's important to note that the Varshakundali is valid for a single year in the life of the native, the progressed year. So it's valid for that 1 year period of time only. And the Varshakundali functions as a subset to the natal chart. And that is to say, it cannot reveal what the natal chart does not promise. Therefore, it's essential that a thorough examination of the natal chart be performed prior to Varshaphala analysis. So Dr. Chorak, in his books on Varshaphala that were mentioned earlier, he summarizes the role of Varshaphala in Vedic astrology very concisely. Varshaphala is used most effectively as a complementary, supplementary, and confirmatory tool to natal chart analysis. Thus, Varshaphala is an important branch of Vedic astrology, supporting natal chart analysis and really offering a magnified view into the timing of events during the progressed year. So I'd like to take just a moment now and talk about some of the unique features associated with Varshaphala. So Varshaphala interpretive rules, they're distinct. However, they do share many similarities with Parashara's Jyotish. Firstly, the Varshakundali and the divisional charts that are constructed. They're done so in the same manner as the Rashi Kundali. Also, the planets, signs, houses, their significations, their characteristics are the same. And another important point is the lagna of the Varshakundali is still of primary importance. That is to say, the ascendant, the rising sign. it's still very important, even though Varshaphala is solar-based. Continuing with some of the unique features of Varshaphala, the limited duration is an important distinguishing feature. The Varsha Kundali applies to a single year only, from one solar return to the next, the progressed year. There are unique planetary aspects in Varshaphala. So the planetary aspects are different in Varshaphala than Parashara Jyotish. The Varshaphala aspects may be friendly, inimical, or neutral. The Muntha is the next unique feature. So the Muntha is the progressed ascendant. It's a very sensitive point in the Varsha Kundali. It represents a pivotal link between the natal chart and the Varsha Kundali. The Muntha represents the Lagna at the moment of one's birth, and it progresses by one sign each year in the life of the native. So the Muntha is the birth ascendant, or Lagna, in progression. The condition and placement of the Muntha in the Varsha Kundali is a very important indicator for the events that are going to occur during the progressed year. Then, of course, we also have the Muntha Lord, that is the planetary ruler of the Muntha sign. And, of course, this is also quite important. The Muntha Lord is an important interpretive element of the Varsha Kundali and also indicative of the nature of events that are going to unfold during the progressed year. Then we have the Varsheshwara, that is the Lord of the year. So in Varshaphala, there's an elaborate system of planetary strengths that are used to calculate and determine the Lord of the year, or the Varsheshwara. So due to its technical strength and its aspect upon the ascendant, the year Lord very significantly influences the events that take place during the progressed year. So the condition of the Varsheshwara, the year Lord, when strong, not surprisingly, that's supportive of auspicious results during the year. When it's weakened, then inauspicious results are indicated. Continuing with unique features of Varshaphala, there are 16 Tajik yogas. These are a fascinating area and unique feature of Varshaphala. One of the most fascinating areas of the study of Varshaphala is the 16 Tajika yogas. They're distinctly different than the yogas of Parashara. And several of the Tajika yogas have a very, very important synergy with the Varshaphala dashas. And generally, the Varshaphala yogas often express themselves through the Varshaphala dashas, which leads us into the next topic of the Varshaphala dashas. Also very unique. And as one might expect, they play a crucial role in the timing of events for a progressed year. So these Varshaphala dashas partition the progressed year into several shorter periods of time with corresponding predictive results. And these allow for very fine tuning. That is to say, the Varshaphala dashas allow for very fine tuning for the timing of events within the progressed year. There are several different Varshaphala dashas, such as the Vimshotri, Muda dasha, and the Yogini dasha. These are nakshatra-based dashas. Additionally, there's the Pativini, Huda, and Balarama dashas in the Varshaphala system. There are many more unique and fascinating features of Varshaphala, such as the Sahams and the Tripitaka chakra, which are dealt with extensively in the texts that were mentioned earlier. Unfortunately, due to the limitations of time, we can't go into all of those during today's webinar. But these unique features are very important components of a Varshaphala reading. So let's take a moment and just review what's been covered so far. We discussed and defined Varshaphala as an interpretive system in Vedic astrology. And we've discussed the origin and tradition of Varshaphala in the Tajik branch of Vedic astrology. And furthermore, we've discussed the role of Varshaphala in Vedic astrology. That is, Varshaphala should be employed as a subset to natal chart analysis. Very important point, hard to overemphasize that. Varshaphala is most effectively used as a complementary, supplementary, and confirmatory tool to the natal chart analysis. Additionally, some unique features of Varshaphala have been introduced as well. Now we're ready to introduce an important component of a Varshaphala reading. So during this introductory section, we'll take a moment and discuss an important feature, an important elementary concept in a Varshaphala reading. And it's worth noting, and I think it's important to note that a Varshaphala reading is really a wonderful way for a Vedic astrologer to stay in touch with clients on a regular basis. So when performing a Varshaphala reading, it's important to begin, as we've discussed earlier, with the current trends that are indicated from the natal chart. So it's best to take the dasha analysis to at least 2 levels, the Mahadasha and Antardasha. However, taking the dasha analysis to a 3rd level is even better. So, and we don't want to overlook the transits, the gochar, because the transits are very important, particularly the transits of the dasha lords, as well as the transit of Shani Graha and Guru Graha and Rahu and Ketu, and also the transit of Kuja Graha. Mars can also participate in certain events for an individual. So these are important points in determining current trends indicated from the natal chart. Once those trends have been identified, once the current trends of the natal chart have been identified, then the Varshaphala analysis can begin. So it's worth noting that the natal chart trends provide the overall direction and promise for the progressed year. Varshaphala provides greater detail and finer timing of the events that are indicated from the natal chart for the progressed year. So Varshaphala cannot indicate what the natal chart does not promise. And very importantly, it should not be used in isolation. So continuing on with our discussion of the Varshaphala reading, determining the placement of the natal lagna within the Varsha Kundali is a suggested first step within a Varshaphala reading. So the location of the natal lagna in the annual chart or Varsha Kundali, that indicates a specific area of a native's life that attains prominence during the progressed year. So within the Varsha Kundali, the house location of the natal lagna, that enlivens the significations of that particular house for the progressed year. So the significations of a particular house in the Varsha Kundali become quite important when it coincides with the birth lagna, as we just discussed. Of course, there are 12 possible locations for the natal lagna within the Varsha Kundali, as outlined on these next 2 slides. So firstly, when the natal lagna recurs in the Varsha Kundali, so that's the first line of our table in this graph. When the natal lagna recurs in the Varsha Kundali, that is to say the natal lagna and annual chart lagna are identical, this is referred to as the Dvijanma year. And that's indicated over in the right column of your chart. So when the natal lagna recurs, this is referred to as the Dvijanma year. Sanskrit term, that's what Dvijanma is, a Sanskrit term meaning second birth. So the Dvijanma year is considered the year of second birth. And it's considered potentially challenging when it occurs. However, there are several cancellations to the Dvijanma year. So, continuing on with the location of the natal lagna in the Varsha Kundali. When the natal lagna occurs in the second house of the Varsha Kundali, The emphasis for the progressed year is on second house matters: finance, domestic life, new means of livelihood. Continuing down the chart to the third house, when the natal lagna falls in the third house of the Varsha Kundali, that emphasizes for the progressed year the courage, competition, adventure, siblings, communication. Continuing, the natal lagna falling in the fourth house of the Varsha Kundali emphasizes the home environment, vehicles, education, and the mother. When the natal lagna falls in the fifth house of the Varsha Kundali, that emphasizes for the progressed year children, learning, scholastic activities, creative intelligence, recognition. When the natal lagna falls in the sixth house of the Varsha Kundali, that indicates health issues, accidents, injuries, obstacles, death. Continuing on with our chart, when the natal lagna falls in the seventh house of the Varsha Kundali, of course that's going to emphasize marriage and partnerships during the progressed year. When the natal lagna falls in the eighth house of the Varsha Kundali, that will emphasize a more severe or chronic component to ill health or disease, accident, strife. When the natal lagna falls in the ninth house of the Varsha Kundali, this emphasizes fortune, virtuous pursuits, dharma, higher education, long-distance journey. When the natal lagna falls in the 10th house of the Varsha Kundali, that emphasizes achievement, promotion, and profession. And when the natal lagna falls in the 11th house, profit, gain, recognition, fulfillment of desires are emphasized during the progressed year. Finally, when the natal lagna occurs in the 12th house of the Varsha Kundali, that emphasizes ill health, loss, the potential for hospitalization, and foreign travel during the progressed year. So now we can utilize this information and apply this principle of locating the natal lagna in the annual chart as an important starting point in Varshaphala reading. So here, in this example, this slide depicts the natal chart of Christopher Reeves, born September 25th, 1952 at 3:30 a.m. New York, New York. So many of you know Christopher Reeves was an American actor, film director, producer, screenwriter, author, and activist. And he achieved particular notoriety for his acting, particularly for his portrayal of Superman. And on May 27th of 1995, Christopher Reeves suffered a tragic accident and became a quadriplegic after being thrown from a horse during an equestrian competition. So he shattered his first and second vertebrae in the region of the neck, leaving him paralyzed from the neck down. So this date of May 27th, 1995 is a focal point for our analysis today. If you'll notice on this particular slide, we have the Rashi Kundali with the South Indian style on the right and the North Indian style on the left, with the degrees of planetary placement and the lagna displayed underneath that. Then on the bottom of this particular slide, we have the Vinchotri Mahadasha sequence from the date of birth forward. And then on the right-hand side, we have the dashas that were operative on the date of the accident on May 27, 1995. So as we discussed, the first portion of any Varshaphala reading is the natal chart analysis. So let's take a moment now and briefly look at the condition of this natal chart. And specifically, we'll look at the lagna lord, as well as the Vinchotri dasha for this particular natal chart. So you'll note within this natal chart there are some indications of accidents and unexpected events that appear. So firstly, we'll note that the lagna is at 29 degrees, 23 minutes of the sign of Cancer, and thus Gandanta. So it's cuspal between a water sign and a fire sign. So it occurs on the cusp of a water sign and a fire sign. Furthermore, the accident and surprise planet Ketu is relatively close to the Lagna at 26 degrees. And we'll notice also that the Lagna Lord, the moon, if you'll notice, it is placed in the 5th house in its sign of debilitation with Mars. And very importantly, the Lagna Lord moon receives a full aspect from the planet Saturn in the 3rd house. Turning our attention for just a moment to the Vimshotri Dasha portion of the natal chart analysis. The Vimshotri Dasha for May 27, 1995, as we stated just a moment ago, was a Sun Mahadasha, Jupiter Antar Dasha, and Mercury Pratyantar Dasha. So, taking just a moment to very briefly analyze the Dasha and Dasha Lords, you'll note that the Sun, the Mahadasha Lord, it is placed in the 3rd house of competition, and it's associated with the 3rd, 12th Lord Mercury, though it is exalted. Perhaps more significantly, you'll notice that the Sun is placed with 7th and 8th Lord Saturn in the 3rd house. So Jupiter, the planet Jupiter, is the Antar Dasha ruler, and it is retrograde in the house of action, the 10th house, and importantly placed in the 8th house from the Sun. And Mercury, the Antar Dasha ruler, is placed in the 6th house from Jupiter. So these relative locations of the Dasha Lords also underscore the possibility of an untoward event or an accident during the progressed year. So the progressed year is birthday of September 25, 1994 to September 25, 1995. We'll talk more about that in just a moment, but to conclude our analysis of the natal chart, we can note that the natal chart indications point to the possibility of an accident. And now we can turn our attention to the Varshaphala chart. And in particular, now we're going to apply this principle that we've learned of determining the location of the natal Lagna within the Varsha Kundali as a first step in a Varshaphala reading. So you'll notice on this next slide, on the top half of the slide, we have the Rashi Kundali. On the right-hand side again, we have the South Indian style, and the left-hand side, on the top, we have the North Indian style. So the top 2 graphics contain the Rashi Kundali, and then on the bottom, we have the Varsha Kundali for the progressed year. And you'll notice that the Varsha Kundali is for September 25th, 1994 to September 25th, 1995. That chart would have been cast, the Varsha Kundali chart would have been cast at the precise moment the Sun returns to its exact sidereal location at the moment of birth. So that Varsha Kundali, we can turn our attention to that now for just a moment. So as you'll note, with the yellow highlight, we can note that the natal chart Lagna of Cancer now falls within the 3rd house of the Varsha Kundali. So hopefully everyone can see that. That's highlighted in yellow. So as depicted by the yellow highlight, the natal Lagna of Cancer is located within the 3rd house of the annual chart. So what does this do? This brings into prominence 3rd house characteristics during the entire progressed year. This, of course, includes the native's courage, determination, as well as participation in competitions. All of these are 3rd house characteristics that are now enlivened due to the natal Lagna being placed in the 3rd house of the Varsha Kundali. It also emphasizes, very importantly, the region of the native's physiology concerned with the neck and shoulders. So you'll note additionally that within the 3rd house of the annual chart, We have a debilitated 12th Lord Mars occupying the 3rd house. So in this example chart, we can see that factors surrounding the condition of the natal lagna in the Varsha Kundali converge and support the natal chart analysis of a possible accident. Of course, there are a lot more features of Varshaphala and interpretive points of Varshaphala that we could discuss about this particular Varsha Kundali. For example, through the use of some of the Varshaphala dashas that we talked about earlier, we could take a more detailed look at some of the critical time periods where this chart's progressed here. However, due to our limitations of time today, we have to conclude our analysis for the time being. So in summary, with this example, we have applied the technique of locating the natal lagna in the Varsha Kundali, and we've determined that there is a convergence of factors from both the natal chart and the Varsha Kundali. These factors indicate the possibility of an untoward event or an accident, along with the possibility of the neck and shoulders being impacted. So this example that we just discussed is meant to illustrate the importance of the linkage between the natal chart lagna and the Varsha Kundali as a suggested first step in preparing a Varshaphala reading. So in review, today, during this Varshaphala introduction, we have defined Varshaphala, including its origin and tradition, and we've explored the role of Varshaphala within Vedic astrology. We've introduced unique principles and features of Varshaphala. And finally, we've presented an interpretive technique of Varshaphala, that is the location of the natal lagna in the Varsha Kundali. At this time, I'd like to take just a moment and extend my thanks to everyone in attendance today, and also to the American College of Vedic Astrology for hosting this webinar and allowing me this opportunity to discuss Varshaphala today. Thank you so much, everyone, for this. And just a reminder that you can visit acvaonline.org for more information about 3 upcoming events. And I think at this point we can address any questions and answers that might come up by way of our chat bar.
Michael, thank you so much. This is Angela, and that was really outstanding. So interesting.
Thank you.
And just the depth, it's really amazing. It'd be wonderful if we could do a larger class on this, because it's such a helpful technique for people forecasting through the year. So thank you so much.
Yes, of course.
So if people have questions, oh, thank you. So if people have questions, go ahead and type them in the box, and we'll go ahead and do some Q&A. Oh, okay. So hang in here. Let me start bebopping through. Okay, we had a question here from Jana Lynn, which is where to find the year dashas in a program showing the progress chart. Jana, I think that is something that you'd have to research in your own program that you're using. If the question is more specific about specifically having to do with the Varshaphala technique, go ahead and repost out and we'll make sure we get that answered. Okay, we have a question. this chart, they want to know if this chart is always calculated from the birth location.
Yes, that's an excellent question. And earlier we were talking about the fact that there is discussion among Vedic astrologers whether to use the birth location during the erection of a Varsha Kundali, or whether to use the location at the moment that the location of the native at the time. And there's some discussion on this. Dr. Charak addresses that in his books. I would encourage people to research this. I have found that using the location of birth provides the best results for me. And I like to think of it that if we were to take all of the Varsha Kundalis over the course of a person's life and we could somehow merge them into one chart, that one chart would be the natal chart. That would be the Varsha Kundali. So there's a linkage. There's a linkage between the annual chart and the natal chart. And since the natal chart is, of course, extremely dependent upon the location of birth, and there's a dependency upon the annual chart, I prefer to use the location of birth in the construction of the Varsha Kundali. But it is a subject of discussion.
Next question from William. Could you say a little bit more on the Dvijanma year?
Yeah, yes, of course. I would like to first of all say that there's a wonderful discussion of the Dvijanma year in Dr. Charak's Predictive Techniques of Varshaphal book. Very extensively discussed. In general, the Dvijanma year is considered a bit of a blemish when you're doing a Varshafal reading. If we think of it as a year of second birth, it means that there's a transition going on. And what I would like to indicate is a transition can be positive, it can be neutral, it can be negative. It depends on several other factors. However, if there are other factors in the annual chart, and more importantly, in the natal chart that are indicating a difficult time, then the Dvijanma year has to be looked at very carefully, because that will give further indications about the nature of the duress that may be experienced during the progressed year. As I mentioned earlier, there are several cancellations to the Dvijanma year, so we don't want to use the Dvijanma year in isolation. So that is to say that, for example, if the planet Jupiter and the Moon are well placed in the Varsha Kundali, that can cancel some of the negative stigma associated with the Dvijanma year. So there are several cancellations to the Dvijanma year, but it's a fascinating area of research, and it is dealt with extensively in Dr. Charak's book, but we don't want to just cursively say that the Dvijanma year necessarily portends inauspicious events.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Anil says, thank you so much for an excellent presentation, and I'm sure that's reflected through everyone here. It was wonderful. And he wanted to know about the YouTube. Okay, Anil, we're going to be uploading those to YouTube, and we'll be sending out a mailer on that. And I'm running a bit behind on a couple of those, but I plan on getting that caught up this weekend. So keep an eye out, and we will post that out in an email, through our email newsletter. So if you're not signed up, make sure you go to our homepage, acvaonline.org, and sign up for that. Next question is, how about dasha in the annual chart? How significant of that dasha?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's so fascinating, the dasha systems that are in the Varshafal system. It seems as if the dasha system of choice for many Vedic astrologers is the Vimshotri Muda dasha. And so this is a derivative of Maharishi Parashara's Vimshotri dasha. And it's used extensively. Dr. Charak mentions in his book, however, there are extenuating circumstances, when it's good to take a look at some of the other dasha systems as well. My humble opinion is when starting to do Varshaphala, it's good to start with the Vimshotri Muda Dasha. And it's interesting to note that the Muda Dasha comes in two distinct flavors, if you will. The first is, of course, these are nakshatra-based dashas. So the Vimshotri Muda Dasha can be based on the moon's location in the natal chart at birth, or it can be done at the moon's location in the Varsha Kundali. So there are some Vedic astrologers that use the location of the moon in the Varsha Kundali. There are some that use the natal chart. I prefer the natal chart. But it's an area of research, and I'd like to encourage everyone to take the time, if they can, to research some of these dashas, particularly the Vimshotri Muda Dasha, with their own chart or in the process of their Vedic astrology practice, and you'll be able to see that the yogas of the Tajik yogas manifest themselves through the dashas. It's fascinating, and that allows you to really fine-tune the timing of events for the year. So I don't know if I addressed that question very well or not, but there are 5 different dasha systems, and you can research that extensively in Dr. Charak's book or Dr. B.V. Raman's books.
Thank you. Next question is, how does a solar eclipse in the Lagna sun impact the Varshaphala for that year?
Yeah, that's a really great question, and it impacts it very significantly. And so we always have to watch out for the eclipse dates when we're casting a Varsha Kundali. And because Varshaphala is solar sensitive and solar based, whenever we're casting a chart on the day that an eclipse occurs, this represents a major transition in a person's life, not surprisingly. So as we all know, the positive value of eclipses are that it gives us a chance to focus on our sadhana. It's a wonderful time to focus on our spiritual program and our sadhana. And extending that into the Varsha Kundali, the occurrence of an eclipse at or around the moment that the Varsha Kundali is constructed indicates, again, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a year of transition, of major transition. And that, again, can be positive, it can be negative, it can be neutral. Depends on the characteristics within the Varsha Kundali to gather more information about how the year is going to unfold. But there will be transitions, they will be profound. Oftentimes I've noticed that it's a very, very deep spiritual transformation that occurs if there's an eclipse on the day that the Varsha Kundali is constructed.
Wow.
I have a friend of mine that has that actually coming up this year, so it's very important.
Okay, we have another question. Which ayanamsha do you use?
I use the Lahiri.
Lahiri.
For calculating my charts. Yeah. There are a lot of there's a lot of research done on the Ramanayanamsha and so forth, and I leave this in the very capable hands of all of you Vedic astrologers out there as to which Ayanamsha to use. I've been using the Lahiri Ayanamsha.
Okay, Anil has a question. If someone is born in November, so if I'm looking at the Varshaphala in November 2015, will the Varshaphala be for 2015 or 2016?
If you're constructing a Varsha Kundali on November of 2015, that will extend from November 2015 to November of 2016. So from one solar return to the next solar return is the domain of the Varsha Kundali.
Next question, do you use the D9 as part of the Kundali interpretation?
Yeah, that's really a good question. And it's really yes is the short answer. So I didn't have room in today's presentation to include the Navamsha with the Varsha Kundali or with the natal chart, but it's a very, very important component, as we all know, to the Varsha Kundali reading and the Varshaphala reading. So yes, and there are other, also look at the D10 and the D3 and all the divisional charts that you're used to using in natal chart analysis can be used in Varshaphala.
Excellent. Okay. If there's any more questions, go ahead and type them in. It looks like I've covered everything that was here. Yep. Michael, it looks like we've wrapped it up as far as questions go.
Okay.
A lot of great questions and really interesting information. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for participating and being here today. Thank you so much for taking time, and very much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month for another ACVA free webinar. Bye-bye.